This is episode 10 of She Doesn't Know, where I talk about neuroscience, creative obsession, and a few questions for God. Let's talk about one of the world's most powerful wonders, children, and how the world destroys this powerful force. There is something the ancient world knew that we have either forgotten or chosen to ignore. The creative energy inside a child is not just cute or precious. It is genuinely powerful. A child who hasn't yet been told what's impossible creates without limits. They don't argue with reality, they just make things. And in the making, they tap into something most adults spend their whole lives trying to figure out: a pure, unblocked connection to the force that drives all of existence. Creativity is not a talent. It's not something that you pick up in an art class. It is the most fundamental force in the universe, expressing itself through human beings. Every civilization that has ever thrived, from Renaissance Italy to Islamic Golden Age, from ancient Athens to 1920s Harlem, did so because of creative energy that was set free. Every civilization that has collapsed till date has done so because that same energy was choked off at the source. We are living through that choking right now. Jeffrey Epstein's network is probably the most documented modern example of this pattern, in which some of the most powerful figures in global finance, politics, entertainment, and academia were connected to the system of abuse of minors. But Epstein was not an isolated phenomenon. He existed within a wider culture of elite abuse that has surfaced repeatedly across institutions. The systematic abuse documented within BBC Hollywood studios and music industries, the Franklin scandal in the 1980s, which linked Nebraska savings and loan fraud to a network of child trafficking connected to figures in Washington. Epstein's mentor and financier, Leslie Wexner, was connected to Mega Group, a secretive network of billionaire Jewish philanthropists with deep ties to Israeli intelligence. The Crowleyan current that ran through much of the 20th century occult culture made this logic explicit. Aleister Crowley, whose influence on secret society thinking and certain entertainment industry figures is extensively documented, and he wrote openly about the magical potency of youth and innocence and what could be drawn from it. His system of thelema and the various orders that descended from it included Otto, treated the manipulation of life force, including the life force most concentrated in the youth, as a central magical technology. These ideas did not stay in grimoires. They traveled through the counterculture into certain corners of entertainment industries and into the worldview of people with money and connections to act on them without any consequence. So, the entertainment industry deserves a particular attention in this case, because child stars perhaps the clearest modern example of what happens when the creative fire of youth is fed into a machine that exists to extract value from it. The pattern is so consistent that it becomes almost invisible through repetition. An extraordinary gifted child, usually from a family without resource or knowledge to protect them, is placed inside a system run entirely by adults with financial interests in their output. Their creativity, their energy, their very personality becomes a commercial product. The system takes everything it can extract for as long as the extraction is profitable, and then discards that remain. The psychological wreckage is everywhere. The former child star who described abuse, addiction, breakdown, and complete loss of self are not exceptions to the system. Across many ancient spiritual traditions, children were understood to carry a special kind of power. In Kabbalistic thought, the deep mystical tradition within Judaism, the soul of a child was seen the closest thing on earth to infinite creativity and the source of everything, where everything comes from. The Zohar, one of the most Kabbalistic texts, speak of children as carrying the light that hasn't yet been dimmed by ego, fear, or what society tells you to be. Their imagination is in its pure state, and this was considered a direct line to divine creative intelligence. This is why many mystical traditions treat children as prophetic, not because they were special individuals, but because they hadn't yet been shut down. Ancient mystery schools in Egypt and in the Mediterranean world taught that the trained imagination was a tool that could actually shape reality. Children who hadn't yet learned to disbelieve lived inside this naturally. Their play was, in the deepest sense, world building. Indigenous cultures across every continent held similar beliefs. The Australian Aboriginal concept of dream time doesn't separate creativity from reality. It is to create and participate in the ongoing making of the world. These were not primitive superstitions. They were careful observations about consciousness and what it can really do. When we look at a lot of ancient cultures that practice child sacrifice, the underlying logic to this was, however, horrifying and reveals something important. The most valuable, most vital thing was offered up as the greatest possible gift to the forces beyond the human or the darker interpretations, as a way of seizing the vitality and redirecting it towards the powerful. The child was not killed because they were weak. They were killed because they were considered extraordinarily powerful. This idea that creativity, spiritual energy of the young, can be taken, exploited, or destroyed for the benefit of powerful adults did not die with the ancient world. It changed in its appearance. Now let's take the Jeffrey Epstein case, for example, and the powerful network around him is perhaps the most disturbing modern version of this ancient pattern. The files, the testimonies, the accounts that have come out, along with many of the hidden or sealed, described the systematic exploitation of the young and some of the most powerful people on earth. In finance, politics, entertainment, academia, the full picture has been deliberately buried, but the pattern is undeniable, and extreme youth on one side, extreme power on the other. And the transaction in which young are consumed by those who already sit at the top. Whether you read this or hear me with purely criminal terms or a wider cultural pattern, the message is the same, and it's the one that is written in ancient fire altars. Those who accumulate the most power and corrupt system do so through exploitation of destruction and killing the youth and its energy. The bright, vital force that lives becomes raw material for those who have stopped generating their own. But you don't need to look at the elite criminal networks to find the destruction of childhood. The most effective destruction happens quietly every day, in the classrooms, living rooms, and on the screens how children hold and how they walk. Research consistently shows that children enter school as highly creative, divergent thinkers, and when they leave, it is increasingly obedient by the book ones. Creative thinking scores drop sharply as children move through formal education. We are not discovering children's limitations, we are building them. The school system in its current form was not designed to grow creative power. It was designed deliberately by its founders in the 1800s to produce factory workers, obedient citizens. Sit still, memorize this, give the right answer. The child who asks too many questions, who can't stop moving, who makes unexpected connections, they are seen not as gifted, but as a problem. They get labeled, managed, directed into compliance. Media finishes what school starts. The modern attention economy is not neutral. It is a machine built to extract your time, attention, and children who might otherwise sit in boredom to build entire inner worlds of extraordinary richness are instead handed infinite scroll algorithm loops designed to keep them consuming forever. You cannot create while being entertained. Consumption and creation are complete opposite states. We have built a world that keeps children in permanent consumption mode and then wonders why original thinking is dying. Social media delivers an even sharper wound. A child who paints, writes, dances, or builds something, who creates purely for the joy of it, quickly learns that what matters is not the act of creating, but the reaction it gets. Creativity becomes performance. Performance needs approval, and approval requires fitting in. And so creativity fire slowly goes out, replacing something wonderful with something safe, predictable, and sellable. And why is this disaster for all of us? This is not just a personal tragedy for individual children. It is a civilization catastrophe because creativity is the mechanism by which humanity solves its biggest problems and imagines new ways of living. Climate change, disease, poverty, violence, none of these will be solved by obedience. None of them will be fixed by people trained only to give correct answers on a test. They will be solved, if they are solved at all, by people who held onto enough of their childhood creative fire to imagine something that doesn't yet exist and make it real. Kabbalistic tradition speaks of tikkun olam, the repair of the world. It is understood as a creative act, an ongoing co-creation between human beings and the source of all things. You cannot repair what you cannot first imagine differently, and you cannot imagine differently if your imagination was quietly colonized at age 7 by a system that needed you to be manageable. Every child whose creativity is killed is theft from the shared future, one fewer mind capable of leap that changes everything. And we are doing this billion times over and over again every single generation. The ancient traditions that honored creative power of children were not being romantic. They were seeing something real. A child fully alive in their creativity is operating at the very edge of what human beings essentially do. The job of any society worth the same is not to harvest that power or suppress it. It is to protect it, to build a world where it can mature without being slowly killed off. This means replacing industrial school models with education that treats imagination as the most important faculty, not distraction from the real work. It means giving children time to make things, stories, music, objects, code, gardens, whatever pulls them in, and treating that making as a genuinely important thing. It means protecting boredom and unstructured time as necessities, not luxuries. And it means being honest about the fact that powerful institutions benefit from population that is creatively passive and easy to control. The mystics across traditions were pointing at the same truth through different languages. The creative force is the closest thing to the divine that we can access in children, and it burns out most unpurely. We have been sacrificing that fire for a very long time. Until we stop, we keep building societies that are technically impressive and spiritually hollow, rich in things, dead in imagination. And the most powerful thing that we can do right now is simple. Let children create and then have the courage not to destroy what they make.